Hello and welcome to the Procurement Podcast, brought to you by BizClick and our sponsors for this series, Amazon Business. This is your go-to podcast for all things procurement. If you're ready to move from being a tactical buyer to a strategic leader, you're in the right place. Tune in and together we can build a better bottom line. I'm Aaron McMillan, editor of Procurement Magazine and your host for this podcast series.
Hello and welcome to the Procurement Magazine podcast. I'm your host and editor of Procurement Magazine, Aaron McMillan, coming to you from Chicago at the US Summit. Our guest today is a Chief Wonder Officer on a mission to rewrite the playbook for the modern era. With over 21 years of experience leading massive transformations at global giants like Kraft Heinz, Kellogg's, and MGM Resorts, she has seen firsthand that the biggest challenges to innovation isn't the technology, it's the people. As the founder of Wonder Services, she helps organizations move past the hype of digital transformation and into the reality of AI activation. Please welcome the woman helping leaders navigate the shift into what comes next, Amanda Prochaska. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I'm like blushing over here. That was fantastic.
Oh, well, that's what we like. I like to give you the hype for it. And I mean, you deserve it. You've been
Thank
around
you.
for a long time and
Yeah.
done all the great things. And obviously, you're sought after. You've just been telling me that you've just come from a very busy panel that you're on.
And you know what was interesting? My first leader in procurement was in the audience today, and I was doing the math, and I was like, that was 24 years ago. So yes, I have been around the industry for a long time, and I've been blessed with some amazing leaders that have showed me the way, and then I've been able to hopefully forge that for the future of procurement too.
Was that almost like just kind of stop you in your tracks and kind of think about your journey when you see that first procurement lead and you're like, I've come such a long way since then?
I have, and so is she. Like she's now the head of indirect procurement at a very large organization, and so it's fun to watch everyone's careers kind of blossom in their own ways. I remember one of the first things that she did with me, first week of onboarding, she took me to a grocery store and had me find like dented cans, and then made me go up to the cash register and negotiate a discount. So I will never forget it, but it was like one of those magical moments, like coming right out of high school, or not out of high school, out of college, and being like part of my onboarding. It was just really cool and creative at the same time.
Were you able to do it? Did you get
I
that
did.
discount?
I walked out of there. I was like really proud of myself.
You should be. You should be. Well done. So great. So before we kind of get into the topics, I was wondering if you could take us back a little bit. So obviously, you feature at events all over the world. When you were growing up, is that something you envisaged for yourself? Did you always kind of want to be in front of people doing procurement? Or
No, I actually fell into procurement kind of. I was an international political economics major, right? But I didn't want to go work for the government. So I was going through a little booklet in college, and it was alphabetical. I went through all the A's, and I was like, nothing is cool. And then I got mostly through the B's, and I came across a buyer, and I was like, wait, people can buy things for a living? Like that sounds like a lot of fun. And so I was also a French major, and there was a Schneider Electric had their North American headquarters at the time really close to where I lived. And of course, they're French based. They had a buyer position open, and one thing led to another, and I've never looked back.
great.
Yeah.
What do you think has kind of kept you in the industry for so long and wanting to kind of transform what you do rather than perhaps go elsewhere?
I love the people. The community in procurement is just phenomenal. Always willing to help. They're looking at new ways of doing things, but and they're always willing to give feedback, which I just have appreciated. But throughout my career, I was always drawn to transformation because I like fixing things. Like I can see a path forward, and I want to be involved in fixing it. But I also felt like as I proceeded forward in my career that there was a lot of legacy that I was potentially building, and that's important to me. Like I want women in procurement, all kinds of procurement people, and to be attracted to procurement as a place to have a really great career. And I felt like this calling to be able to do that.
What makes you happiest about your job? What brings you the most joy when you're working?
Oh gosh. I love to create. So one thing that I was getting it in corporate, but it didn't really resonate until I started my own company. and the ability to be creative every single day about small problems or big problems really started resonating with me. And that's what I love to do.
What is it about it that brings you so much joy? What is it about it exactly? I like to get the
I
details.
don't, okay. So it's more about problem solving, and seeing. Oh, I'll give you an example. So when I lived in the Midwest, I loved growing a garden. And when you grow a garden, you can till the soil, you can fertilize it, you can plant the seeds, water it, and you're going to get, hopefully, if you do a good job, a fruit at the end of the day. And I loved that aspect of I did that. I planted that seed. The same thing happens in my company now is you see a problem or you see an opportunity and you can have your fingerprints on it and hopefully help a lot of other people as a result of what you just created.
Perfect. I was wondering if I could talk to you about the landscape for women working in procurement.
Yes.
Do you feel like we've moved past that getting a seat at the table conversation, or
I
what do you
hope that
think?
we've moved across, away from getting a seat at the table conversation for all of procurement. That is actually that question, and we don't have good enough data, so we can't do anything. Was what inspired me to first start speaking and writing on LinkedIn and beyond. In 2013. So I hope now with the capability that we've been able to do to build, especially post-COVID world, that we firmly have the seat at the table. But for women in procurement, I still think, on average, I think we're hovering around 35% women in procurement today. It's gotten much better since I started. You're seeing a lot more women CPOs. I think there's always an opportunity for this really cool balance of people within procurement. And whether it's women or men, or it's people from outside of procurement coming into procurement with different backgrounds, I liken it to a symphony, right? You're not going to want to go to listen to a symphony of all flutes, right? A symphony is beautiful because you have all these different perspectives coming in and building something better with a better perspective and getting to better solutions because of it.
This podcast is in partnership with Amazon Business. Amazon Business is your one-stop destination for everything your organization needs. Think of it as the Amazon you already know and love, but specifically re-engineered for the way you work. Amazon Business gives you access to business-only pricing on millions of items and quantity discounts that scale with your growth. It's about spending less time bogged down in those manual tasks and more time on what really matters. So head over to Amazon Business and make the power of Amazon work for you.
What kind of culture do we need to create that leads to a safe space for women to thrive?
That's a really good question. I think there's a couple of things that come right to the top of my mind, and this might be a little controversial, so I'll just put it out there. Okay, so there are a ton of women in procurement that get labeled as aggressive, okay, and it limits their career. But what women in procurement should be assertive, right? And what a lot of women that talk to me, and they're like, I am just as assertive as the gentleman sitting next to me, but he gets labeled as assertive and I get labeled as aggressive, and I get dinged on my performance reviews because of it. But I'm showing up in the same way as my male counterpart. So I think we have some work that we need to do there alone to say, okay, are we labeling people in a way that is not representative of truly how they're being and holding them back because of that? And women have been labeled this, then they moved on to other organizations, and then they hold back, right? And that's just a shame, because women can be assertive. They can show up in different ways within organizations. And frankly, a woman in procurement should be assertive. That's what brings value at the end of the day, and change in good ways. And so I feel like it's a shame that labeling is happening, and that then women are just holding back because they've had a bad experience.
You're obviously someone who has a voice and uses it really well to promote other women in procurement. just wondering, and feel free not to answer this, but
Yeah.
have you had a similar experience in your career where you've kind of been labeled things unfairly, but and what kind of keeps you going and means that you haven't held back and you've kept speaking up?
I don't know what my parents did when I was now I was one of three. I was the middle child. We were all girls. So maybe there's something to do with that. But I always came in with just this underlining confidence that if I didn't know it, I would figure it out. Right. And so early in my career, I was promoted fairly early. So I was usually one of a leader in the room, the youngest person in the room, and maybe at times only female in the room. But I never looked at it that way. I was just like, I have value. I'm going to show up. I am going to share my perspective. And I wouldn't be invited to this room if I wasn't valued. Right. And so that's what I ended up doing. Now, there were a handful of situations across my career where I felt like one gentleman, he told me that I was a bunch of talk, but I couldn't actually do the work, like that kind of stuff. And you can either take that feedback and internalize it, or my chance, I was like, I'm just going to prove them wrong. And so I did that. But I don't know if I've been blessed with this confidence, where I was just like, you know what, I'm not going to look at it that way. I'm just going to provide the value and show up and do what I do best.
How would you help people who perhaps have an incident at work where, they've been knocked back and they're on the back foot a little bit. Their confidence has been knocked.
Yeah.
How do you recommend people kind of find it to kind of go again and not so they, kind of hold themselves back, quieten down and don't put themselves forward,
So, I actually coach several women in procurement. And one of the exercises that we do is an exercise called PIE. And it represents performance, image, and exposure. And what a lot of women in procurement do, they focus all their time and effort on performance, but we forget about the image and we forget about the exposure piece. So when someone has a situation where someone else has impacted their image and they're starting to second guess that, one of the exercises that we go through is I tell them, okay, what role do you want to have in procurement? And describe that in detail. Like, if you want to be a head of procurement, how does that person show up? What do they look like? How do they act? What clothes do they wear? Like, be as descriptive as possible. And then you have a choice to make. Do you want to be that person, or do you want to be your own person? And how does that person show up? What do they look like? What do they wear? How do they resolve conflict? Describe it in detail. And then what we do once we have set that image, then we start asking people, do people think of me that way? Do I think of myself that way? And then we build a plan around how do you actually create that image so you feel comfortable with it, but then the people around you also know that you're showing up in that way.
What's it like to coach people in talk me through that experience? I mean, was it kind of something that you always wanted to do, or something you kind of you given advice and someone was like, Amanda, you're really good at this?
So 2 years ago, I was labeling all the time I was spending on different activities in my calendar. So how much time do I sell? How much time do I put against projects? And there was this green category that was networking and coaching. And it at certain weeks, it was 40% of my time. So people were coming to me asking for advice about hey, I'm looking for another job. How do I do that? How do I position myself? How do I build a brand? And so what my team was like, Amanda, you're spending all this time doing this. We should formally do it. Let's build a training program or a coaching program and offer this to people. And it's been absolutely phenomenal, because there have been several women that I helped find their next job successfully, but not only their next job, now they're thriving, they're building their own brands, they're leaving their own legacy. So it was this cool way of being a multiplier within procurement.
Did you have someone like yourself for yourself when you were kind of making your way in your career?
I've never formally had a coach, but I've had some amazing leaders. Right. So I already mentioned one of them. She was here today, Veronica DeLeo, and she was my first. And she's been a friend ever since. I also, Stacey Taylor has been instrumental in my career, another woman leader, Megan Wilson. They're all phenomenal, really successful leaders at this moment in time. So I've been blessed with them to be able to have relationships with them. I never approached them and said, "Can you be my mentor?" Like, no, I just like learned from them. Yeah. And built a relationship with them. And now we've been able to watch our kids grow up together and our careers flourish together. But I was really, truly blessed by several great women in my career and some men. Brian Bancroft is another one. Like I can name them all. But there's been some just phenomenal leadership across the way.
That's so great to hear. And we're so dependent on those relationships,
Yeah.
those personal mentor relationships that kind of shape us and help us to push forward.
Yeah.
I was wondering, for people, I was speaking to Rob Turner, and we were talking about the kind of almost the confliction procurement has, that procurement as a function drives so much for companies. They deliver value to the bottom line, make them more sustainable.
Yeah.
But do they take the time to actually pat themselves on the back after delivering? I see you shaking your head there.
No.
Why not? Why is it fundamentally because the function is always looking to improve because you're never done? Why can't procurement leaders take the time to pat themselves on the back?
Okay, not only pat themselves on the back, but also promote what we've done internally within the organizations and sometimes even externally to the supply base and beyond, right? Or do stuff like what we're doing here today. This was a key learning when I left procurement and then I went into owning my own business because I had to learn how to sell and how to market myself. And looking back on it, I was like, I was really crappy at this, right? In procurement. And I think it's partly because we're analyticals at the core, right? And usually analytical people aren't the greatest that's generally at sharing successes and taking those moments. It's just like, what's the next problem that we're going to solve? So I think it's part of like our culture and who we are and our DNA. But we also don't spend a lot of time upskilling people on how to do this. Right. Like I was just on my panel conversation. I threw out a book recommendation, Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand. It like totally shifted how I thought about like how to tell a story and what resonates with people and how do you sell a concept. And so I think it's partly just how we're born, but then also that we're just never trained in that. We haven't built that muscle to be able to do it effectively.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of help, particularly women, kind of encourage them not only into a space that is historically male dominated, and then not only get them into the space that, and also kind of promote them into those C-suite positions?
Okay, so when I talk to women about coming into procurement, I don't talk about it being male dominated. I talk about how women can bring their value into procurement. Like especially as we shift into this AI era, there's going to be a lot more relationships that are built in procurement. That's going to be more of our focus. Women are great at building relationships, building community, building trust, building influence. And so there's a lot of value that women bring just inherently to procurement that I think is going to be it's going to be magnified here in the coming years. So that's how I sell it, right? It's not about, hey, you have to navigate a male-dominated world or like, hey, we're buying a bunch of widgets. I think there's a lot of soft skills that women bring to the organization. And women have been doing a very successful job at this. So that's where we're seeing a lot more women in procurement getting promoted into leadership positions. Like there was just one that announced today. One of my friends just landed the CPO position at Starbucks, right? So it is phenomenal. Now, Starbucks has had a tradition of hiring women as their CPOs, which is great. But it's another one that we can celebrate and looking forward to see what she does there. But I think that those skill sets that we're bringing to the table is why more and more women are getting promoted into those positions.
And you founded the Global Women Procurement Professionals. You highlighted that the status quo wasn't good enough then.
Yes.
Kind of looking at where it was founded to where we are today. And then, from there, what's the kind of next frontier for women in the space?
Okay, so the premise around women in procurement and why I started GWPP was because there wasn't a community for women, right? And when when women are feeling alone, or when really anyone feels alone, like they're going through something all by themselves and nobody else has gone through that challenge, it's very isolating, and people nowadays feel more isolated in general. I wanted to change that because women in procurement, they're not going through stuff alone. I'm sure there's someone else out there that's gone through a similar situation. So I wanted to have that community of people where we could rely on each other and help support each other through those hard times and even celebrate the good times. So that was the premise behind it. Now, I think we still have room to grow. We are women in procurement in general, we're so busy and we get pulled into the day to day that sometimes we forget to look up and look around and be like, who can I lean on? How can I creatively solve this? Where can I go into my community to help? So I think we can do a better job of that. But what I do love is, like, when I come to conferences like this, there's more women. There are more women that know each other. And who have supported each other in the past. So I think we are making some great progress, but there's always still room for improvement.
How would you like to see it developed? What does the next 5 years look like? Is you just continuing on?
It's going to be interesting in the next 5 years because the technology layer is going to change quite a bit, and what we do within procurement is going to change quite a bit. So like I said before, I think the skill sets that women inherently bring to the table, I think there's going to be a natural evolution of probably even more women in procurement being here. Not that men can't do the same thing. I'm not saying that, but I just think there's just a natural fit for that acceleration. But it's going to be interesting. Procurement organizations are going to look different in the future. So it will be, I wish I had a crystal ball to predict what that's going to look like, but unfortunately I don't. If I did, I probably wouldn't be here right now.
I've got terrible news.
Oh, no.
We are doing, in the podcast series, we like to get our speakers to pay a question forward. We had Dennis Shank on earlier on today.
Okay.
His question he wanted to ask was, overall, in procurement, what do you see procurement looking like in 20 years? Amanda, the floor is yours.
Okay, now that I have to bring out my crystal ball. I've actually been fairly public about this. I think with the technology enablement that's coming our way, first of all, I think is fascinating. I never thought, I think you and I were talking about this earlier, but I never thought that I was going to be able to be a pioneer. I always wished when I was a young child, I was the first to cross the ocean, or the first to be to the moon, or first to see the mountains in the America West. And I just never thought that was going to be available to us. And now it is. It's the new AI era. We're going to be pioneers in that. And I think it's such a blessing. It's also very scary. I'm sure a lot of the pioneers were like, we're doing what? So for me, procurement, I think, is going to be a very small, centralized group of people. And a lot of the procurement activities are going to be pushed into the organization with the guardrails of the agents that have been built by procurement that can do procurement work. But I don't see a heavy procurement function in the future, but those people that are in the middle, in the function still, are going to be very AI forward, obviously, very technically adept, but they also are going to be really great at the soft skills. So you're still going to need to have supplier relationships. You're going to need to have to understand the strategies and influence your stakeholders and build that trust. I like to say lead with love too. There's going to be a lot of that's still needed, but I do believe a lot of the activity around procurement is going to no longer be centralized.
When you are coaching people, mentoring people,
Yeah.
is anxiety around AI something that people
Yes.
come to you a lot for?
Yeah.
It must be so difficult to kind of quell because everyone knows it's going to transform the function, but no one knows what it's going to look like. How do you kind of help people who perhaps feel a bit anxious around AI?
I always feel the good antidote to anxiousness or anxiety in general is to go do. Right? So if you're anxious about AI and what's coming our way, my first question would be, have you built an agent? Right? Have you started building your muscle around it? Because it could be a lot scarier than in reality, but you don't know that because you haven't tried doing it yet. And then once you try doing it, it unlocks all of this potential thought process around, I could be thinking about this, or I could be building a different skill set to anticipate what's coming our way. So I always coach people, the first step is to go vibe code something.
I think it's a really good kind of way to look at it. Just give it a go. Why not?
Right. I built 5 agents in the car on the way home. I wasn't driving, but on the way home from spring break. It was a 7-hour drive, and I didn't do it the whole time, but I was curious about like capability that might be available out there, and I was kind of testing things, and I ended up building 5 different agents. So
What do the agents do?
they help people that are looking for jobs to understand if their resume is going to pass the applicant tracking systems. Because so many people come to me and they're like, hey, I'm looking for a job. And then I get their resumes and I'm like, well, okay. And so it looks at that. And then it also makes the changes on the resume of the skill sets that they're missing, but they just don't have it on the resume.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And obviously, I asked you a question from our last speaker. I'd like you now to pay that forward. So for our next guest, you get to ask them one question. What would it be?
What's keeping him up at night?
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You could get very personal into that.
No, I mean, work related. What's keeping him up at
I
night?
will always
It could be a baby
when
at
I
home.
talk. Great. Amanda, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for your insight. I've just got a few more questions before I let you go.
Okay.
These are quick fire ones.
Oh, rapid fire.
Don't think about them too much. I
Okay.
want you to say the first thing that kind of comes to mind. So my first question is, what's the most exciting thing about the future of procurement?
The people.
What is one thing people still get wrong about procurement?
That we buy things, and that's it.
What is one piece of technology we rely on now, which will be obsolete in a year?
Most of our procure tech stack.
I wouldn't say that too loudly.
Sorry.
Amanda, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Procurement Magazine podcast. Until next time, we'll see you then.